At the end of a heady news week of budgets, greylisting, explosive Eskom revelations and expectations, as we've just been sharing with you, of a cabinet reshuffle, we explore what's next for South Africa and whether President Cyril Ramaphosa is doing enough to stabilise the country. Professor Bonang Mohale is the president of Business Unity SA and joins me now. Good evening to you, Prof. Thank you very much for your time. You, as an organisation, have held several consultations with the president on a range of issues, more specifically relating to the economy. But your belief is that he makes big promises and fails to act. What specific examples do you have in mind when you say that or express that?
In fact, there are too numerous to mention. The MMA taking the president to court over the appointment of the SABC board is only but one. Remember that the Eskom board exceeded its 3-year mandate by 18 months. In fact, there were only 5 board members for that 18 months period. There was no sense of urgency in spite of stage 6 load shedding to address this with heightened levels of urgency. The financial task force on the financial action task force is another example where we had 61 of these items that were discussed with us in October of 2021. Now our excuse is that actually we are only left with 8 of these. You see, in leadership, 6 Sigma teach us that not even 98% is good enough. Because if 98% is good enough, it means 2 out of every 100 babies that are born in Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital will fall through the hands of the doctors and the midwives and hit the concrete floor, probably with their heads, and die. It means 2 out of every 100 aircrafts that land on OR Tambo will overshoot the runway with dire consequence for the passengers. But also remember, the cabinet reshuffle we were promised after the budget speech. I suppose 2030 is still after the budget speech. Yeah. But also the vaccine rollout. We came in very late as South Africa. We started political posturing by talking about vaccine apartheid, when in essence, we didn't have the money to pay for it. Because you see, when you steal money, eventually it gets finished. So by the time we got onto the COVAX rollout program, the president set us a target of 67% herd immunity. That's 40 million South Africans. It would have taken us 400 days or 13.3 months. By the time we retired the Disaster Management Act, after 750 days, we had only fully vaccinated 30.3% of the population. As we speak with you today, we're not anywhere close to 50% of the adult population being fully vaccinated. But also Medupi, Kusile, Ingula. These are the biggest coal-fired power stations. The first 2, Ingula, is hydroelectric power. They should have been finished in 2013 and 2014 effectively. They are 10 years late. The costs have doubled. And in fact, in Kusile, only 1 of the 6 units is working. They were supposed to give us 9.6 gigawatts each, which means we should not have had load shedding at all. But also some state capture thieves that have been named, called by name by the Zondo Commission, which took 4 years. 787 pages, the first report, 3 volumes, R1 billion. Those thieves are still in Parliament as we speak. So I think that's what concerns us as business, that there is no sense of urgency. It looks like more as no hadah, and yet every catastrophe that nature could throw at us, including that which is self-inflicted own goals.
Let me come in there, Prof, because I can hear that, as you say, where does one start? And there would be a litany of things that you would outline to substantiate your answer to that very first question. I guess, the follow-up question for me would be, when you talk about people who are in cabinet who have been named, and if we listen to what the presidency statement with regard to something that's happening now around Media Monitoring Africa and the issue of the approval of the SABC board, so to speak, is that we get what is couched as explanations for why each of these things is complex or has stood in the president's way of accomplishing those goals. In this instance, it's around the Act and some of those issues. And one casts their mind back and think, on COVAX or on all of the others, there were a number of maybe diplomatic or operational issues. So we're given this impression that there are reasons for why the president can't act by the time that he says he will. In your view, how do you evaluate what we have to understand or accept as explanations?
No, in fact, the reasons are all well known to us. The president is looking for his own people a year before the 2024 elections. So they want to use SABC not as a national broadcaster, but as a state broadcaster. No act prevented this president or any other from appointing Mosebenzi Zwane or even Des van Rooyen as the Minister of Finance at that time. So where it suits them, cadre deployment is done very quickly. In fact, the president, which is the subject of our conversation this afternoon, gave us that in 100 days we'd have a social compact. It's more than a year, we don't have a social compact. And these are not complex things. What are we expecting as commitments from government? We're expecting government to say, we're going to stop state capture, corruption, bribery, stealing, and cheating. We are going to stop and accelerate service delivery. We are going to stop cadre deployment. We are going to stop our own conflict of interest as expressed in Chancellor House, which owns 25% of Hitachi, at Medupi and indeed at Kusile, where when the cost goes from 30 to 50 billion, there's a perverse incentive because 25% of 50 billion is much more than 30 billion. Therefore, instead of doing what you are constitutionally mandated, which is uphold, respect and protect the Constitution, you are looking at how much money you can make to pay the people at Lutilo House. What we are expecting as commitments from business is to say we'll be good corporate citizens, we will stop aiding, abetting, agitating and orchestrating for state capture because some of our own have also been named in the Zondo report, that we are going to increase investment, especially in infrastructure, that we are going to pay SMEs in 30 days. We're beginning to measure some of our members who are paying small and medium enterprises in 7 days, that we are going to implement gender equality and pay parity, that we are fully committed to initiatives like mandatory partner rotation so that it's followed by mandatory firm rotation, that we are going to grow our own timber and skills of the future. Iman?
I just want to circle back to the Hitachi Chancellor House issue because, if you go back to old articles, timelining the commissions around Medupi and Kusile, we, somewhere in there between, the inception of this arrangement, I think around about 2006 or so, to about 2014, that stake, what is your understanding of where that stake is? Was it not bought back by Hitachi and sold to Hitachi Europe? Does the ANC today still have that stake? And then there was, of course, the other detail around Hitachi paying a fine. I think it was like a $19 billion or a $19 million fine for, some allegation or some accusations that the SEC in the US had put to them with regard to, getting involved in influencing governments for contracts.
The bigger question, Iman, that we as the citizens should be addressing, because these things, there are more than 734 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies. They should be called public-owned entities and public-owned companies. Does Chancellor House still exist? And does it still hold stakes in other entities? The answer is yes. Chancellor House still exists because that has not been wound down yet, because there's not been a full admission by the ANC to say it is a clear, unequivocal conflict of interest to be a ruling party and still own stakes in the state-owned enterprises. The same way that they've not admitted that cadre deployment led us to where we are now. The looting at Kusile alone has cost us 2 stages of load shedding. In fact, now the executives in Eskom are saying, when we said to the Eskom executives that Kusile 1, 2, and 3 are actually have design faults, we were told to run them full steam at 800 megawatts. That's why 1, 2, and 3 collapsed. The chimney collapsed, and now that has cost us probably 3,600 megawatts, which is 3 stages of load shedding.
Yeah.
So we can see that we make decisions not in the best interest of South Africa Inc., but in the best interest of the party. And yet all these politicians, all the cabinet members swear allegiance to the supremacy of the Constitution. So we were hoping that it would make it easy for us to have government commit, business commit, so that labor can also commit to 0 strikes in a period of about 5 years, 0 double-digit salary demands, but also commit to increases in productivity. The last study that was done, out of 60 countries in terms of productivity, South Africa came stone last as number 60. So there must be a meaningful conversation around increasing productivity in this country, Iman.
Thank you, Professor Bonang Mohale. I think, a longer discussion just on tracing the genesis of some of the deep dysfunction in Eskom with regard to those power stations, the procurements and the contracts around that is overdue. And maybe we can do that and have you back for that discussion. But we appreciate your analysis tonight, Professor Bonang Mohale.